Good morning. Welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission. The commission will come to order. Madam Secretary, please call the docket.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is an evidentiary hearing in case number 9666 concerning Skipjack Offshore Wind or Offshore Energy LLC and U.S. Wind Inc.'s offshore wind applications under the Clean Energy Jobs Act of 2019.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. This hearing was noticed on August 12, 2021 with the issuance of order number 89907. In that order, the commission published a procedural schedule, and we are on track today to have 6 days of evidentiary hearings. Let me begin by taking appearances of the parties in the order in which they will make their case. We'll begin with Skipjack Offshore Wind LLC.
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. Joseph Curran on behalf of Skipjack. I'm also joined by co-counsel Christopher Gunderson, Diana Crever, and Susan Shipper, all of the Venable Law Firm. Thank you.
Thank you. U.S. Wind Incorporated.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Carvel Collins on behalf of U.S. Wind, and also like to enter the appearance of my colleague at DLA Piper, Neil Thupari. I'll turn it over to Mr. Previs from here.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tom Previs from the law firm Saul Ewing, co-counsel with Mr. Collins, and I'm joined by my colleague Anamika Roy, who is also here in the room today.
Business Network for Offshore Wind.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Nathan Howe. I'm with K&L Gates, and I represent Intervenor Business Network for Offshore Wind.
Thank you. We'll next turn to the Maryland Energy Administration.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ankush Nair on behalf of the Maryland Energy Administration.
Thank you. The Sierra Club. Sierra Club is not present.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I had trouble getting my mute off. Susan Miller on behalf of Sierra Club and the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Town of Ocean City, Maryland.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jay Holland. I'm with the firm of Joseph Greenwald and Lake, and I'm here to represent the town of Ocean City.
Thank you. Maryland Office of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. William Fields for the Office of People's Counsel. I'd also like to enter the appearances of David Lapp, People's Counsel, Joseph Cleaver, Deputy People's Counsel, and Gary Alexander and Daria Pugh, Assistant People's Counsels.
Thank you. For Public Service Commission staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. I would also like to enter the appearances of Michael Dean and James Greger.
Thank you. And finally, do we have counsel for ICF with us today? We do not. Okay. As I stated, this is a trial type evidentiary hearing. We have some general housekeeping to address. First and foremost, since this is a virtual proceeding, it is important that you speak clearly for the court reporter and that we avoid any crosstalk. There's no need for us to rush. We'll take the necessary amount of time over the course of the next 6 days to conduct this hearing in an efficient manner. If you are not speaking, please be sure to turn off your microphone and limit any background noise. I'll plan to call a recess for a break about every 10 minutes for every hour and a half, and roughly a 30-minute lunch break. Today we'll push that lunch break back just a bit. I plan to recess by approximately 5 o'clock each day, but that will depend on where we are during our schedule of examinations. However, I trust 6 days will be deficient. Let me just state at the outset that I'm mindful of the breadth of this proceeding. We have 2 offshore wind developers filing 5 separate applications. They are mutually exclusive for each of the 2 developers. We do have hundreds of pages of testimony, and we have a filing that was just made yesterday by U.S. Wind. There are 8 parties sponsoring dozens of, or at least a dozen witnesses, hence the need for some ground rules today. I have before me a list identifying the parties that wish to cross-examine particular witnesses. If other parties wish to examine, I'll ask that you have your camera on and that you raise your hand so I could see that you wish to cross-examine. We'll have some rules of conduct for this hearing, and these are the standard rules I typically use. In a trial regarding examination, witnesses will be limited to direct, cross, and redirect. Cross-examination is limited to the scope of the direct examination, and redirect is limited to the matters brought about during cross-examination. If a commissioner asks a witness a particular question, counsel shall have an opportunity to further examine that witness on the resulting answers. Participants on the same side of an issue may not cross-examine each other's witnesses on that issue, and additionally, succeeding cross-examiners will not be permitted to engage in repetitive cross-examination. An objection put to a witness during cross-examination may only be made by the counsel sponsoring that witness, and any request for clarification of a question on cross-examination may only be made by that witness. Cross-examination is not meant to be used as a substitute for discovery. Questions designed to educate the questioner about the substance of another party's pre-filed testimony will not be allowed or permitted. Finally, all witnesses will be subject to recall by the bench with appropriate notice. All witnesses will be dismissed at the conclusion of this hearing. We do have a number of exhibits that have been pre-filed. Every exhibit that's offered into evidence must be properly authenticated and have a foundation laid prior to admission into evidence. However, I will waive that authenticity requirement if the parties stipulate to the exhibit's authenticity. Parties are discouraged from including discovery responses in lieu of cross-examination. Finally, when an exhibit is referenced during the hearing, the examining attorney should make specific reference if it's a pre-filed exhibit. This is going to allow the commissioners to go into their online drive to find that exhibit. So give us a little extra time in this virtual environment. I also understand that we do have a tremendous amount of confidential material before the commission. So I would advise the parties and my fellow colleagues, we have to be a little careful because we're in open court today. Of course, if we do need to go into closed session, we will have to disconnect the YouTube feed and proceed. I'd like to limit that as much as possible, although I know that it will be inevitable at points. Do any of the parties today have questions based on my instructions? Seeing none, I would also remind all parties that wish to speak to have their camera on before they speak. Any preliminary matters before we begin by the parties?
Mr. Chairman, this is Carville Collins. I do have one preliminary matter for the commission and parties.
Yes, Mr. Collins.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, I believe you did mention it, but I wanted to confirm that the commission and parties are aware of a best and final offer made by U.S. Wind yesterday, October 26th, and filed with the commission. An explanatory cover letter was served on all parties to the case, and confidential schedules explaining changes to U.S. Wind's bid number 2 were served on the commission and all parties signing a protective agreement. Also wanted to add, for the benefit of the proceedings, that U.S. Wind CEO Jeff Grabowski will be available to address any questions on our best and final offer filed yesterday during his scheduled appearance on Friday, October 29th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. I am glad that you are not going first today. The commission has received, I do have a copy in front of me of your best and final offer that was filed yesterday. So we'll take a look at that very soon. Any additional other preliminary matters? Seeing none, we'll begin with opening statements by the parties that wish to make an opening statement. There'll also be an opportunity for closing statements, 5 minutes apiece. We'll begin with Counsel for Skipjack.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Good morning to you and your fellow commissioners. We'd like to thank you on behalf of both Orsted and Skipjack for the opportunity to present our witnesses over the next several days who will support our round 2 applications. As you know, Skipjack's bids not only will bring more clean, renewable power to Maryland citizens, but we're also excited by the fact that the way we've structured our bids will allow Maryland to be a real supply chain in the offshore wind industry for years to come. Moreover, we're hopeful that the commission evaluates our application and we'll have a sense of confidence that our projects have the ability to be actually constructed. Ørsted, as you know, is the global leader in the development of offshore wind. The company has immense financial strength. It's constructed over 30% of the globe's offshore wind capacity to date. In the U.S. alone, we are the largest developer. We have developed or are in the process of developing 4,000 megawatts of offshore wind across 6 projects that are currently underway. So we hope that you have a sense of confidence after hearing from our witnesses that we're more than capable of actually constructing the projects that we would hope you would authorize. There are really 4 things, Your Honors, that we would like you all to focus on through our witnesses, 4 things that we would like you to tease from our application and testimony. The first is what I sort of alluded to earlier is Ørsted is a company of action. We have already taken concrete steps to deliver offshore wind to Maryland by 2026, the legislative date that we all are operating under. Skipjack has made substantial investments in both its round 1, and we'll talk about that, as well as its round 2 projects. Recently you may have heard that we have completed for our round 1 obligations $13.2 million in upgrades at Trade Point Atlantic here in Baltimore City. Those upgrades will accommodate not only the assembly and marshaling of heavy offshore equipment, but basically it's a demonstration of the ability and the actual follow-through that Ørsted and Skipjack have done in making their round 1 obligations complete. We've also, you may have read, just acquired a large piece of property in Ocean City to build a $20 million operations and maintenance facility. That facility will not only support our round 1 project, but we're hopeful it will also, and we're committed to having that facility in Ocean City support our round 2 project as well. We've selected an industry-leading cable supply partner. That partner, it's part of our application, will manufacture cable array cables here in Maryland. And we're ready to put shovel in the ground to construct the nation's first array cable factory here in Maryland to begin as early as next year. And Your Honors, and we've sent to the commission yesterday, actually, and a copy of it this morning, but we're very excited to announce that Ørsted has just reached a deal with GE to bring to Maryland a tower manufacturing facility. This factory will supply not only Ørsted's Maryland projects, but will be available to supply other projects as well. In doing so, we're creating really well-paying jobs, well-paying green jobs here in the state of Maryland. And those are just a few examples of examples of the ability of the company to follow through with its commitment, and it does what it says it will do. The second point I'd like to leave you all with is Skipjack's continued investments have significant economic benefits to the state, but they're also providing real opportunities for small and minority businesses, small minority Maryland businesses. For instance, regarding our $13.2 million that we've just invested in Trade Point, one of our partners there was Strum Contracting to do the welding, fabrication, and construction services. We've also made a recent significant investment in Crystal Steel, a Maryland minority-owned business, and this investment will deliver nearly $70 million in prefabricated steel components throughout our Mid-Atlantic portfolio of projects. For Maryland, this means 50 new jobs in Federalsburg, Caroline County on Maryland's Eastern Shore, increasing the workforce of that company by nearly a third.
Counselor, you're at your 5 minutes. Did you just want to hit on your last 2 items?
Yeah, and the third really quickly is we have enforceable commitments here. And we're committing to $400 million in commitments. No other developer has agreed to that level of commitment. And we would like that to be that $400 million of commitment integrated into into the order approving our plan. And that's finally the final point. And I'm sorry to run over, but we really do think the commission should spend very close attention to the Bates-White analysis that we provided you. It's consistent with Maryland's clean energy vision, but more importantly, it gives you all the opportunity to approve a number of bids in this analysis. It's very consistent with the state's electrification goals. And the other ratepayer analysis, I dare say, really make it impossible for the commission to improve a number of bids here, and quite frankly, to do more in successive rounds. So we're excited for our witnesses and this opportunity. And again, I'm sorry for going over, but they'll be available to go over all the highlights and points that I just mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Does U.S. Wind wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you so much, Corporal Collins, for U.S. Wind. Let me just say, first and foremost, thank you to the Commission and to all of the parties for their cooperation and for working together to date to bring us to hearings this morning. There's been a lot, and as we talked about back in the pre-hearing conference, there's been considerable time compression associated with this schedule, and appreciate so much the efforts of everyone in trying to work together to get us to hearings today. For U.S. Wind, our commitments to this project are known and well stated in our application. Our commitments to Bethlehem Steel, bringing that back to Trade Point Atlantic, to our state and its economy, to its labor force, and the many different actors in that economy. It's all in our application, and we look forward to sharing more about that with you and answering questions that any of the parties have about that. We're very excited and pleased for the content and the quality of what we are bidding. But I would like for the Commission to also just consider one thing. It is not, and I repeat, it is not just about press conferences and economic impact announcements that you've just heard from our friends at Skipjack. It is also, and that will be something that will be before you and in this case, it is also about complying with the statutory requirements. Our bids, and we will of course have more discussion on that, they will be in compliance with all of the statutory requirements, not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. And I think that is a very important analysis for the Commission to consider. And when a particular bid or a particular proposal does not pass that statutory requirement, that is a serious matter. Because in the end here, what we are doing is we are acting upon a legislative directive from the General Assembly to advance offshore wind in this state in compliance with how it was laid out, and also to achieve compliance in a number of other areas, including such things as emissions reductions and renewable energy goals. So we hope and look forward to the opportunity to demonstrating that compliance, and would hope that the Commission stays focused on that issue with all of us going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counsel. Do any other parties wish to make an opening statement? I don't see any other cameras on. Oh, Mr. Spivak, do you?
Mr. Chairman, staff does not have an opening statement, but I would like to echo Mr. Collins and thanking all the parties for their generally cooperative attitudes and actions over the course of the last couple of months in bringing this case to hearing.
Thank you. It appears that Counsel for the Business Network, Mr. Holland.
Counsel for the Town of Ocean City.
I'm sorry, Town of Ocean City.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Town of Ocean City supports renewable energy. The town is not opposed to wind turbines and appreciates the economic development that will accompany these projects. Instead, they are opposed to locating wind turbines in the historic Ocean City viewshed. The town asked the Commission to protect this viewshed in these proceedings. Ocean City opposes Skipjack and US Wind proposals because they do not protect the Ocean City viewshed. In this commission's own findings from the prior Skipjack hearings, the PSC stated that one of the reasons they supported the larger turbine was the distance of over 20 miles from Ocean City. While we have continued concerns about this distance, at the very least, to follow its own findings, the PSC should not award any ORECs for turbines any closer than 20 miles from Ocean City. In fact, the PSC and the applicants have the opportunity, due to the size and location of the lease area, to address our concerns and only award ORECs at least 30 miles from Ocean City. This would address the viewshed concerns, and Ocean City could support the award under those circumstances. As Ocean City has consistently and repeatedly stated to US Wind, Skipjack, and this commission, the right steps and measures need to be taken. These additional wind turbines will be off the coast of Ocean City for decades. What Ocean City is requesting here is that the commission, in considering the OSW application, must take into account the distance from Ocean City's shore these proposed OSW projects will be, and the significant effect that these projects will have on Ocean City's viewshed for the years to come. Both US Wind and Skipjack's applications state they intend to use the General Electric Haliade X14 MW turbines. These massive turbines are the largest in the world. They'll be 850 feet tall, 3 times the height of the tallest building in Ocean City. There really could be no dispute that these turbines, even those located 20 or 22 miles from Ocean City's shore, will be visible and noticeable from Ocean City. Indeed, the experts are in agreement that will be the case. Ocean City opposes the locations of the turbines of the Skipjack project, which will be as close as 20 miles from Ocean City's shore, and US Wind's 3 bids. Ocean City is particularly concerned and opposes US Wind's bid 2, which would have an additional 55 turbines as close as 15 miles from Ocean City's shore, and US Wind's bid 3, which would have an additional 82 turbines as close as 13 miles from Ocean City's shore. As stated by our expert, Mr. Sullivan, these turbines will dominate the viewshed from the shore and will be contrary to the prior expressed views of the PSC. The town of Ocean City needs viewshed protection. As this commission recognized when considering the round 1 applications, quote, there is a strong public interest in ensuring that impacts to the viewshed as a result of an OSW are minimized to the fullest extent possible. The commission similarly ordered, when considering the round 1 applications, that the OREC awards were conditioned on, quote, the use by each applicant of best commercially reasonable efforts to minimize the viewshed impacts of their respective OSW projects. The commission should consider what, if anything, US Wind and Skipjack have done in ensuring that their proposed projects would minimize to the fullest extent possible the impact these projects will have on Ocean City's viewshed. The commission, as part of that consideration, should have the applicants propose layouts for the projects that would be further from shore than what has been currently proposed, or for the applicants to request from BOEM that their lease areas be extended in order to minimize the impact on the viewshed. Ocean City intends to introduce the testimony of Robert Sullivan, a leading expert in the field of visual impact analysis, who has made thousands of observations of wind energy facilities. Mr. Sullivan will testify as to the viability of the proposed US Wind and Skipjack's projects. Ocean City also intends to introduce the testimony of Richard Meehan, the mayor of Ocean City. Mayor Meehan has been on the Ocean City Council for the last 36 years, 15 as the town's mayor.
Mr. Holland, you're at time. If you could wrap up, please.
That I was at the end, Mr. Chairman, and I think that the commission understands the town's views, and we look forward to a full and fair hearing.
Thank you. We'll next turn to Mr. Fields, and Mr. Fields has shown the example of raising the hand using the feature. So thank you, Mr. Fields. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and good morning to commissioners. The Office of People's Counsel will be primarily focused on the impact of customers from the OREC payments that would flow from these proposals. You have under the statute, you'll be making a threshold determination of whether the impact will be below a certain threshold. You have multiple analyses before you on that potential impact. And those analyses have a variety of assumptions and different methodologies. We would encourage the commission and hope our evidence will assist the commission to ensure that its finding on ratepayer impact will be based on reasonable methodologies and assumptions, without consideration of what that impact, without consideration of how that impacts the number of megawatts that can be approved. In other words, it's important to find the best answer on possible ratepayer impact estimate and go from there. We also have concerns that we've raised in testimony about the potential fairness of responsibility for transmission upgrade costs if Maryland ratepayers are asked to take on some of those costs directly, and we'll explore some of those issues during the hearing. With that, thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to participating along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other parties wish to make a statement, we will proceed with the trial. Mr. Curran, do we have any exhibits to enter from the get-go here today?
We do, Your Honor. As an initial matter, we have sent in and pre-filed our notice of compliance with the Commission's public comment hearing, advertising, and publication requirements. And I think we've had that pre-marked as Skipjack Exhibit 1.
So marked.
Okay, and without objection, we would ask that that be entered into evidence.
With no objection, that Skipjack Exhibit 1 is moved into evidence.
Thank you.
Any other items?
None other from us.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a Mr. Howe? Is there a Mr. Howe raising his hand? Because if so, I don't see it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if the commissioners would entertain it, the Business Network would like to make a brief opening statement.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Howe, I did not see your camera on. Again, just a reminder for all parties, it helps if you turn your camera on in advance of your speaking, because you're on a grid here with 25 faces. Mr. Howe, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the network is thankful to the Commission for its time and consideration of the applications at hand here, and granting OREC eligibility will support Maryland's competitive position in building a local supply chain for offshore wind. By way of background, Business Network for Offshore Wind is a nonprofit educational organization with the mission to develop the offshore wind renewable energy industry and its supply chain. The network advances this mission by partnering with industry and government, bringing together global developers, policymakers, and other stakeholders to create and sustain well-paying jobs that benefit local economies, all while providing cost-effective clean energy. 4 years ago, Maryland and this commission recognized these benefits and took a remarkable first step to catalyze a local supply chain. While much has changed since then, these benefits are now well known up and down the East Coast. Offshore wind deployment is accelerated at a tremendous pace on the East Coast and indeed around the world. Neighboring states have surpassed Maryland in terms of volume and committed projects. It's largely due to these ambitious goals that these states are attracting significant economic activity by suppliers. Earlier this week, Virginia announced a new blade facility would be located at the Portsmouth Marine Terminal. New Jersey has already broken ground on a new foundation facility and a new port intended specifically for offshore wind, and has recently announced that port will support nacelle assembly. Other facilities and major activities are slated for New York, New England, and even the Gulf of Mexico. Maryland's first step was important and substantial, but more is needed to continue to attract interest and investment in the Maryland economy. To remain competitive, Maryland should continue advancing its local market by awarding OREC eligibility and supporting new projects. And the Commission should find it encouraging that both applicants here have incorporated major manufacturing operations in their respective bids that will support Maryland's local economy. As the applicants have described, Maryland has already seen significant investments in the supply chain. Strum Contracting was referenced earlier, and I'll point out that Strum is also a recipient of the Maryland Energy Administration's capital program. Additionally, the Archon Training Center has become one of the first facilities to offer Global Wind Organization basic safety training, and it will soon export that expertise to New Jersey. The network is also aware of suppliers' continued interest in the Maryland market, with 203 entities registered with Maryland addresses in the Supply Chain Connect platform. These are companies that want to work in offshore wind. Granting eligibility for ORECs will support these companies and attract new investments. Remaining competitive at this critical juncture will place Maryland businesses in prime position to enjoy the full build-out of offshore wind. For perspective, the White House has announced a goal to install 30 gigawatts of nameplate capacity by 2030 nationwide. State goals already surpassed 40 gigawatts. The network believes this is only a start. Taking action today will support the growth of Maryland businesses into major players in the industry. The network respectfully recommends that the Commission issue an OREC order that advances Maryland's offshore wind goals, supports the further development of a Maryland-based supply chain, and enables Maryland to remain competitive with these other states. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Before you call your first witness, Mr. Curran, any other matters we need to address?
None other from Skipjack, Your Honor.
All right, please call your first witness.
Yes, thank you. Your Honor, our first witness will be David Hardy, the CEO and President and Chief Executive Officer of Ørsted North America.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy, we see you. Can you please raise your right hand and wait to be sworn by the court reporter?
Mr. Hardy?
Ms. Crockett, we heard you for a moment.
Yeah, I'm looking for Mr. Hardy.
Oh, he's on the screen with his hand raised.
Oh, I see him now. His little name isn't written there, so. Sorry about that, sir. Do you swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
Mr. Hardy, I saw you say I do. I don't think we heard you. Can you speak up? Can you just state your name? Yeah, we don't have an audio from you. Your microphone appears to be open, but we can't hear a word you're saying. Now your microphone is mute, so keep trying.
Hi, good morning, Chairman. Can you hear me now?
Third time's the charm, yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, can you just
Yes,
say-
I do. Or she can do it again.
Okay, I think we're on the record that you have affirmed the oath.
I have affirmed it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Curran, you're a witness.
Yes, Mr. Hardy, would you please state your full name for the record?
David John Hardy.
And your business address, sir?
399 Boylston Street, floor 12, Boston, Massachusetts, 02116.
And your employer, and what is your title?
My employer is Ørsted, and my title is President and CEO of Ørsted Offshore North America.
And who are you testifying on behalf today?
I'm representing Skipjack Offshore Energy, LLC.
And could you give your date of birth, sir?
It's today, 10/27/1971.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you.
Sure. Do you have before you two documents entitled, respectively, the public and confidential direct testimonies of David Hardy that was filed on August 25th, 2021, consisting of 18 pages in one exhibit?
Yes, I do.
And has all the information that was initially identified in the confidential version of your testimony been made public?
Yes, it has.
Your Honor, we would therefore like to de-designate the confidential version of Mr. Hardy's direct testimony and have it marked as Skipjack Exhibit 2.
Mr. Cran, it was marked.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hardy, was this testimony prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes, it was.
And let me ask you, are there any additions or corrections that you would like to make to your testimony?
Yes, I do have one addition to make. On page 11 through page 16, line 2 of my direct testimony, I discussed Skipjack's commitment to growing its presence in Maryland and focusing on investment initiatives that will support the important long-term policy goals of Maryland's offshore wind program and enable Maryland to reach its full potential as a key participant in the development of the U.S. offshore wind industry. And as part of that testimony, I outlined 6 separate initiatives that Skipjack is undertaking. In addition to these local content initiatives and commitments, we are pleased to have reached an agreement yesterday on October 26, 2021, to enable a new commitment as part of Skipjack Phase 2.1 project. Specifically, we'll be partnering with General Electric to jointly facilitate a new offshore tower manufacturing facility in Maryland. This $150 million tower manufacturing facility is contingent on approval of Skipjack Wind Phase 2.1 project. The tower manufacturing facility will be capable of producing 100 towers per year and will create up to 200 permanent jobs in the state, not least the construction jobs for building the factory as well. This facility will be designed to serve not just Skipjack Wind program, but the broader U.S. offshore wind industry. And this investment would cement Maryland's position as a long-term home to critical component manufacturing for offshore wind projects.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. And do you have anything from GE that memorializes in any way this development?
Yes, I have a confidential letter that GE directed to the commission in this proceeding. I'd like to attach it to my testimony as Exhibit DH-2C.
Thank you. And is this the same letter that was pre-marked and sent to the commission as Exhibit 33C?
Yes, it is.
And other than that change, Mr. Hardy, if I were to ask you the same questions that are contained in your direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And is your testimony true and correct to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, we would respectfully move Skipjack Exhibit 2 into evidence along with the new Exhibit DHC 2C.
Mr. Cran, the new exhibit is Skipjack Exhibit 2C?
It is the new exhibit is Exhibit DH-2C, and that will be attached to Mr. Hardy's Exhibit number 2.
Understood. We have his confidential direct as well, which is Skipjack 2C. Exhibit number 2 is so marked. And
Thank you. Your Honor, as those are moved into evidence, the witness is now available for cross-examination.
Your Honor, excuse me, it's Carville Collins of U.S. Wind. We do have an objection to one of those 2 exhibits that have been marked.
okay, what is your objection?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Exhibit 33C is a supplemental response to a data request that U.S. Wind posed to Skipjack back on October 18th. In the supplemental response that is contained in 33C, the answer is non-responsive to the question, and therefore we are moving to strike that response, which is provided as a supplement to U.S. Wind DR 4-1 in this case.
I see that, Mr. Collins. Mr. Coran, did you actually mention Exhibit 33C?
No.
No. Okay, you did actually, and I think that is what caused a little confusion with Mr. Collins. It caused some confusion for me as well. Okay, Mr. Collins, hold on to that objection for later. I think Mr. Coran was mistaken when we were marking DH David Hardy 2C. So at this time, we're just going to move into evidence. Skipjack Exhibit number 2 and Skipjack Exhibit number 2 Charlie. Is that right?
Okay. That's right.
So Mr. Coran, you're on notice that Mr. Collins will have an objection coming up at some point with.
Well, the other, just for Your Honor, for sake of clarity, Mr. Hardy identified the letter that is Exhibit 33C and asked that it be attached to his testimony as Exhibit DH2C. So there's one exhibit to his testimony now, which is his CV. He's adding an exhibit to his testimony, which is DHCD, which is the letter from GE, which he identified and authenticated and has placed in to his testimony.
Correct, but we're not talking about Skipjack Exhibit 33 Charlie now, which is Skipjack's supplemental response to U.S. Wind Data Request 4-1.
That's right. We're just talking about the letter, not the supplemental request.
Okay, that's where some confusion lied. Mr. Collins, are we in a good shape right now?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We'll address that concern at the appropriate time. All right, Mr. Collins, would you like to begin cross of Mr. Hardy?
Mr. Chairman, one question. Is all of Mr. Curran, is all of Mr. Hardy's direct testimony, including exhibits 1 and 2, no longer confidential, or is it all, or is the only thing that's confidential the letter that's attached?
That's correct, Commissioner Herman. The only thing that is confidential is the letter that is attached to Mr. Hardy's testimony.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make
thank
sure
you
I
for
had
that.
it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me clarify that.
Okay, we'll begin with cross-examination of this witness. Again, please raise your hand and turn your camera on early if you wish to cross-examine this witness. I will begin with U.S. Wind. We'll have the first opportunity to cross-examine each of Skipjack's witnesses. Does U.S. Wind wish to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Hardy, good morning. I'm Carville Collins, representing U.S. Wind.
Good morning.
And happy birthday. May there be many more.
Thank you.
In your counsel's opening remarks and in your direct examination, there was mention of a number of investments announced in the summer and early fall for various initiatives. And my question in connection with those investments announced is this: are these dollars that are being invested included in the Skipjack Phase 2 and Phase 2.1 bids?
The announcements that have been made, and we probably should go through them one by one just so that we don't have any misinterpretation. But the announcements that have been made so far are obligations from Skipjack 1 that we're fulfilling. Some of the items, like the O&M facility in the Greater Ocean City area, of course, could be used for part of Skipjack 2 or 2.1 with some expansion. And likewise, a portion of the investment in Crystal Steel is associated with Skipjack 2 or 2.1.
Thank you. And Hellenic Cables, the $140 million investment announced, would that also be included?
Hellenic Cables is affiliated with our bid 2.1, Skipjack 2.1.
Thank you. What about the recent investments announced a few weeks ago? Let me be specific in that regard. Steel fabrication in Federalsburg and also at Trade Point Atlantic. As to those two investment announcements, Federalsburg and TPA, are those dollars included in Skipjack Phase 2 and 2.1 bids?
They're not. Those are orders that we've given to Crystal Steel to manufacture advanced foundation components for our Skipjack 1 project and 2 of our projects in New Jersey. So actually exporting material from Maryland to New Jersey, and then the final assembly of those advanced foundation components will happen at TPA for Skipjack 1. Obviously, again, if we are awarded Skipjack 2 or 2.1, we'll expand that order to Crystal Steel, and they'll be able to do more work there, and more final assembly will happen at TPA.
And Mr. Hardy, may I also conclude that the announcement that was made by a filing last night and by you and your counsel this morning in connection with the GE investment announcement, I assume that also is the dollars there are not included in the phase 2 and 2.1 bids. Is that correct?
The investment for a tower facility at Trade Point Atlantic would be contingent upon us achieving a second award here, either 2.1 specifically, and then the investment would occur as part of the second award.
But to be specific as to my question, are the dollars to be invested and the economic impacts to be realized, are they included in bids 2 and 2.1 that Skipjack has presented to the commission?
They would be over and above what's been previously submitted.
So just to use my vernacular, not included in the bids that are before you?
Objection, asked and answered.
Again, for clarification, I asked whether they were included or not, and was hoping to just get an answer as to whether these the impacts and the costs of these investments are included in the bids or not.
The objection is overruled. It's a simple question, Mr. Hardy.
No, they were not included in the original application. We've been working on this opportunity with GE over the last few months, and we thought that the commission and the state of Maryland would be pleased to see an additional $150 million investment in the state and additional jobs being created. And so we introduced those as we finalized the deal yesterday. We introduced those last night and this morning. So this would be on top of the $400 million commitment that's in our application.
Okay, I'm understanding you to say that they are not included in the bids, and I will proceed along those lines unless you have a contrary view.
I believe that's what the witness stated. It's not included in the bid. It is above and beyond what was included in the bid. Is that correct, Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
So the answer is it's not included.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Hardy. May I ask you, Mr. Hardy, to turn to your direct testimony? And
I have it here.
And specifically to page 12, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
At lines 9 through 11, starting at line 9, does the Skipjack Phase 2.1 bid still include a $400 million investment in Maryland?
If we're awarded Skipjack 2.1, we will make not only this $400 million investment that's highlighted here, but an additional $150 million investment with GE for the tower facility.
Thank you. And then may I ask you to just go down the page a little bit, starting at line 11. Does the Phase 2.1 bid still include another $478 million investment during the operational phase of this project?
Yes, it does.
And if other Skipjack investments in Maryland were announced, let's say, for example, next week, would those also be reflected? Would those also be included in Skipjack's Phase 2 or 2.1 bids going forward?
I think it depends on, I can't speculate on what would be announced in the future, but we would be clear about whether we're counting it against our original obligations or whether we're creating new obligations on ourselves.
Thank you. Let's switch from the investment side to the cost side for a moment, and specifically in your testimony, where you address the cost to ratepayers. That would be at page 16, if you would turn there, please.
Okay.
And starting at line 18, if you would. And I'm just going to paraphrase, if I may, but please feel free to correct me. You testify that by executing the Skipjack Phase 1 and 2.1 bids together with a joint commercial operation date in 2026, Skipjack can deliver Phase 2.1 at a lower cost to ratepayers due to the factors you list on lines 21 on page 16 through line 2 of page 17. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct.
And at page 17, if I may ask you to turn to 17, starting at line 10. You testify there, and again, I am paraphrasing, that Skipjack Phase 2 would direct economic investment over $100 million at an affordable cost due to these same factors that you listed for Phase 2.1. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my testimony.
Now, one party to this case has addressed your testimony on lower cost to ratepayers and affordable cost in its pre-filed report in this case, finding that Skipjack's costs are double or more of the cost of U.S. wind projects of comparable capacity. Do you agree with this finding made by the Commission's consultant, ICF?
I'm not familiar with those specifics.
You're not familiar with that finding of a double or more of the cost of U.S. wind projects of comparable quality? I'm sorry, comparable capacity?
I haven't fully read the ICF report, and I don't know the exact bid prices that U.S. Wind has put in. I'm focused on my applications and my team's projects, and I'm confident that our projects are aggressively priced for the real cost of building these types of wind farms.
Aggressively priced. Did I understand you to say aggressively priced?
I mean, competitively priced, yes.
Thank you. Because of Skipjack's relatively higher proposed OREC prices, Skipjack's applications have the highest net ratepayer impacts. Do you agree with that finding of the Commission's consultant, ICF?
I suppose that logically makes sense.
And another finding of ICF in its comparison report was that Skipjack's bids failed the ratepayer impact test. Do you agree with that finding of the Commission's consultant, ICF?
It's my understanding that there are multiple ways to define the ratepayer impact. In fact, the Commission allowed the bidders to propose their own methodology for that, and we'll have witnesses later in this hearing that will describe the way we've evaluated the ratepayer impact. Specifically, our witnesses Kane and Hibbard.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. In your direct examination, you did mention the investment announcement associated with General Electric, but I think I understood you to say that it was contingent on the award of bid 2.1 of Skipjack. Did I understand your testimony correctly?
Yes, the commitment for both Hellenic Cable Factory and the GE Tower Factory would be contingent upon us being awarded an OREC with Project 2.1.
And if phase 2.1 was not awarded, then what would be the outcome of the GE announcement that was made yesterday and again this morning by Skipjack?
Well, we would not be in partnership with them to ensure that this tower facility was built. I can't speculate about what GE would do without this commitment from us. I think the confidential letter clearly states that we're in partnership to build this, and it's contingent upon an award.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. Mr. Chairman, I would like to turn to one matter that is of a confidential nature due to a confidentiality designation. I have no further questions regarding anything that is public. So at this time, I would ask the commission, if it is appropriate, that we go into confidential session for just this one item.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, are we in a position to cut the live feed?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Just give us a moment. The Secretary will let us know when you should proceed.
Mr. Chairman, if we are going to go into confidential session, there's only one part